I would just like to introduce Nikhil for us. Nikhil is a visual artist professional working in the field of humanities. He is actively contributing to the cultural exchanges through arts administration. He has studied painting as a core subject and pursued ancient Indian history to understand the socio-cultural fabric of ancient civilization. Heritage management being an ancillary area of interest, Nikhil works with organizations and individuals to document their art practice and engages with art education to nurture and promote artistic endeavors. Based in Mumbai, his practice connects him with the Mohle Parikh Center for Visual Arts, the Indian Contemporary Art Journal, Amity School of Fine Arts, and similar pedagogical platforms. He heads the initiative Fund Day, dedicated to documenting the arts to promote heritage and its management. So, welcome Nikhil for the presentation.
Thanks a lot, Meher. Thanks, Priyasri, for inviting me to conduct this. Yes, so let's begin with the presentations. I'll introduce the objective of bringing all these artists together. The ability to appreciate others' existence is the key to culture, and to engage them with tales and narratives is a trait of being cultured. Now that the modus operandi of the world has been forcibly changed by the invisible tiger and the creative faculties brought to a pause, the demand for new modalities of making, sharing, and experiencing art has become even more pertinent. Making precedes process. Insignia. The trigger that automates the action defines the laminas of formation. For conversation series, Why I Do What I Do, the trigger, as part of the Untitled series, we have an eclectic mix of artists with both nascent and formed practices. Exhibition, first, second, third, as well as fourth. All the artists in the group shows together resemble a notion of Jungian idea of collective unconscious, where the works can be perceived as a juxtapose of ontological epiphanies. The first session has a common thread of sensitivity towards ecology and scientific attitude towards making with painterly affinities. The discussions with artists would enumerate the modalities of their diverse praxis through the lens of collective memories, context, and imagery. Triggers to events and life experiences are occurrences. Today, as we go deeper into the 21st century, the reasons for disparities, disjunctions, and derangements have surfaced significantly, where the ecological concerns are at the forefront and equally ignored. The panel today responds to these aspects, and we shall learn what they do, why they do it, what triggers resort the artist to shape their visual practices. So we begin with the conversation with one senior artist presenting nuances to the selected works, leading on to the rounds of dialogues with each panelist. So I would invite Parvati to present her, make her presentation. And to Parvati Nair does not require any specific introduction, but to just highlight her contribution and her work profile, I'll just read out a few points here. She is a Chennai-based virtual artist who plays an active role and is deeply committed to supporting the emerging renaissance of contemporary Chennai. She is the co-founder of Art Collective, the hashtag collective. Parvati is best known for her achromatic drawing-based practices. She also engages with sculpture, painting, and photography. Her black and white graphite drawings are multifaceted works that look at internal, intimate spaces within our bodies and the external public spaces, which we live often through the prism of science and technology. The seminal 20-foot high drawing, A Story of Flight, that is a part of the now world famous Jai Hai art program at the new T2 terminal, Mumbai International Airport. She writes as cultural commentator on aspects of contemporary art such as modern dance and film. I open the platform to Parvati. So I request you to begin with your presentation, please.
Thank you, Nikhil, for that generous introduction. And thank you, Priyasri, for this opportunity to present my work and talk to you at a webinar that, if I may say so, discusses the art of art making. So what are the triggers which make me want to make art? There are obviously many, but I want to start with the idea of interconnectedness. We live in a deeply, deeply complex world where we are constantly getting in information from the books we read, the movies we see, the people we talk to, our own ideas and responses. And yet there is a sense of the whole humanity being connected in different ways. So it interests me when there are, when I take this stream of information and within myself, I find links that connect them, links which are sometimes not perceptible, but which come alive in that space of my mind when I'm looking through it. And in a way to elucidate this, I'm showing a series which was part of Untitled 4 called Deep Symmetries, where an intricately hand-drawn image of mine is paired with an archival photograph that I have taken. And the two are presented together to the viewer for you to draw out your own threads of imagination and interpretativeness. So for example, let me take this one where the image, the photograph on my right is, I took it when I visited a cryogenic center where they were creating these vast containers to cool to store super cooled fluid. And as I was looking into one of these containers at the end, I saw this little gold nail. And I thought, whimsically, this looks like the sun with the planets revolving around it. And I took the photograph, and the photo's not been touched up or messed with in any way. This is the photograph. Later in my studio, I drew this image of the sun, which is, an image sent back by space probes, a heat image of the sun, sort of surrounded by planets. So, there were sort of interesting confluences for me between supercooling and superheating. And then by extension and definition into the world in which we live, the idea of global warming. So you see the idea of interconnectedness then sort of moves into the whys and how I create. So the hows, as Nikhil has already said, is through the fact that I do have a multidisciplinary practice, which I think is sort of the best way to deal with the world in which we live with all its multiple streams and interconnectedness. So the idea is important. Do I do it as an intricate drawing? Do I do a video? Do I do an installation? There is this whole palette of options available to me. And the fun and the danger is being able to sample from these different options. And the why of it is what I like to call a philosophy of space. We inhabit the space we live in, both in terms of the particularities of the city we live in, and that I think becomes increasingly important in the lockdown for that, for that local connection, but also universality in terms of interconnectedness. And as this slide shows you, for me, very often, this philosophy of space is articulated from the language of science. Science is not necessarily my subject. It can be, but it's not necessarily that. It's a way, and then I think a very important way of talking about could the others mute? So this image shows sort of what you see when you have particles that are so small we can't see them. We only see their interactions as recorded in cloud chambers or these giant hadron colliders and the trails that they leave. And this is a really, really small work. And I've always thought, I'm interested in small works and the intimacy and preciousness of small works. But then I realized that it wasn't really small. It was scale that interested me. So this is that sort of same idea. I'll show you another one to show you, which is sort of 15-foot long at the Kochi Biennale, which is still done with just a pencil on wood. There is, there are no, the process is the product. You see the drawing, I do the drawing is the process, the drawing is the product, as you may call it. And then further to, since Nikhil sort of mentioned it, A Story of Flight, which is even bigger, it's 20 foot high. And it is, entering that, what, some sort of commentators have called drawn sculpture, where, it's a three-dimensional surface that is covered with drawings. It's called A Story of Flight, and it sort of, is in the terminal. And it sort of looks on Bombay as a receptacle of ideas. So you see the vapor trails now become the flight paths of, planes into and out of the city, which carry people, ideas, responses, newness. And, if we're talking about a place as a trigger, how can I not talk of the environment as a trigger? The idea of water is a through line through my work, and I've responded to it in many different ways. So this is, yes, it's a trash art sculpture or installation. But what for me was very exciting about it was the fact that it was a community project that took over 6 months. At the Alliance Française in Madras, these bins were set up and the media was very cooperative. We invited all of Chennai to drop in their blue and white trash into these receptacles. So there was the idea of household trash, domestic waste, and segregation, because you were suddenly being aware of all that you were consuming in your home over a month or 2 months. And then with that, I created the wave, and I will show you just a little video. We have sound, it's something that I like to play with. So it was an homage to Hokusai's Great Wave and, the reimagining or the reinterpretation of that wonderful woodblock, but with the trash and the detritus of our times. It spoke, I think, very directly to people about what they were doing in terms of pollution and what they were doing to their planet. So, when people say, what can art do? I think it creates this sense of awareness. It doesn't proselytize, my art doesn't proselytize, but I would like to talk to people about issues both intimate and personal, and about the spaces in which they live. Which of course brings us to our times. I mean, how can we have this webinar about triggers without talking about time as a trigger, and the times in which we live, where one day you could go out and do whatever you wanted, meet whoever you wanted. I could go to my studio, and the very next day time stood still. I mean, it was absolute and it was shocking. And how were we to deal with this? So one of the ways that I found myself dealing with it was literally hovering near the windows of my home, looking out. I was, suddenly folding clothes, doing the laundry and the cooking and all of that. And I was taking breaks to look out and look again and see things which I had seen every day, but seeing them differently. And this resulted in an ongoing project shown by the Goethe Institute Chennai, which has me and 3 other wonderful poet artists, where we're using art and poetry to talk about these times. It's called Held, the Lockdown in Words and Images. So in my case, for example, here was the playground where I could no longer send my daughter down to play. And as I looked and I watched the moving shadows, to me, it seemed like the seesaw, which I had seen every day, was now a sundial. It was marking time. It was marking my time in the lockdown. What did it mean? I don't know, but I recorded it. And then words sort of wrapped themselves around it to, become a series of poems. The photo poem called 5 Windows. photo poetry has had a role in my art for a while, you know, as the centerpiece of an installation, or as text screened on a wall or in catalogs. So this was a very interesting new way for me to present my photo poetry, you know, online in the digital space. And photo poetry, incidentally, has a very interesting history, which sort of checkered, but goes back, you know, all the way to the surreal times where Man Ray's photos were, you know, illustrated with Paul Eluard's poems. So there are these lovely juxtapositions of imagery generated by images juxtaposed with imagery that you photograph. And that's my view down to the playground and from where I took my pictures. And just one more round of photo poetry that I've uploaded on this health site, which results from news images. Now, our dealings with the news are critical to how we are living the lockdown. Either we avoid the news or we deeply engage with the news. We see news items going viral. So I've always been interested in news images because, after all, we are the narrators of our own history in many ways through the news. We are complicit in the stories that come, whether we like it or not, and in how we disseminate them through social media. So it started with me wanting to record an image, and then what then became interesting for me was to then ask other people, what has struck you in the news? Send me the stories and the images that have interested you. And then I redrew them, you know, then sort of maybe going back to the times of Cindy Sherman and the origin of the author and the reproduced image and who's the author and how does it change. And then again, you know, words wrap themselves around the images. So this was an image sent to me by my niece, which went viral. You know, the story of that little child who was so tired he couldn't walk the 800 kilometers home. He was dragged along by his mother. And, you know, this sort of series of photo poetry to me. My very last image also deals with the lockdown, how I am involved in a project involving art, installation, and performance, but obviously we're not going to be able to do this for a while. So given the lockdown, it's sort of moved into an area of, you know, we're going to do an imaged photos, you know, an image storytelling series of videos. And I guess that for me is a sort of, it's an optimistic note that even though many projects have been shut down, you know, that old adage of one door closes and another opens. So it's up to us as artists maybe to find ways of dealing with these times in ways that the times allow us. And, you know, to go back full circle to my drawings and to the wonderful James Baldwin, who says, we write in order to change the world, we paint, we draw in order to change the world. Now, change the world sounds very sort of large and grandiose, but again, he tells you it's not the big change, it's the viewer coming in and sort of responding to your work, maybe something in their brain by a millimeter, by the tiniest fraction. They relook, they redraw, they reconfigure their world and their opinions. And if that happens, trust me, I feel our art has more than done its job. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening to me.
Yes, thanks a lot, Parvati. Yes, before we begin our question answer round here, like I would like to begin with you. Looking at the overall view of your practice, there is a significant element of the lyricism in it. It's so layered in many ways. When we look at a kind of an art nouveau element which is significantly present, and later on the eventual process of including or addressing the ecological concerns, especially when you look at Hokusai's print, there is a staticness, yet the dynamism is so intriguing, and the interpretation which you bring through your installation. So this movement of intimate working with the elements, bringing in, collecting, and eventually with the current works, what you mentioned about the image poems or the stories, the poetries and the photo poems, what you bring in. So how does this all come together? So I'm curious to learn that about from you.
In many ways, I think there is always an element of text for me in how I think, because the words,
Are you able to
in a way,
locate?
how we think is limited by the
Register,
words that
because
we
it's a
have,
registration link.
whatever the language. But, so I think it sort of starts with that, and then with an image, and then they kind of become intricately fused. The photo, the idea of this photo poetry is an example of, I really didn't take any of those pictures with the idea of, making them into photo poems. They were just, I was seeing this, it surprised me. I thought, my goodness, my view of however many 10 years is still surprising me. There is something to learn from that. And I took the pictures, and then, for me, then I put them away, and then words came, and then I realized the words did marry the images. So I think for me, this act of creation, there is always for me lyricism. My work, there is a poetic edge to the work, whether in images or form. And I don't think that is, that doesn't make it any less powerful. I don't think, beauty is a highly contested word today, but I think if there is a certain visual appeal, whether in the words or the image, that draws somebody in and then allows them to unpeel those layers, that is what I'm aiming for. So even with the trash installation, there is a certain, there is a certain symmetry, if you like, drawn out of the chaos of all these myriad objects. And I think that's a way of talking to people and a way of trying to engage them in the conversation, because if they don't engage, how do you start the conversation?
Right, great. Yes, I certainly have more questions for you, but we'll come slightly later. We have other artists on the panel: Deepti Batlawala, Kumar Misra, Gurunathan, Astha Patel, and Savita Ravi. Meher, could you please start? Yes, right. So this is, again, as I mentioned, it's a very interesting eclectic mix of different artists, and all of them have some correlation with ecological concern, and or either a very intimate relation with science and inquiry, more like a laboratory study. To begin with, Deepti, she has a very a close connection with the laboratory, while she is an artist and practitioner, and she keenly looks into the botany, zoological aspect of it. So I will direct this question to Deepti.
Yeah.
Deepti, yes. So,
Yeah. Hi.
right. So, how does this scientific approach come into your work, and what intrigues that?
Yeah. First, I would like to thank the Priyasri ma'am for giving this opportunity. And coming towards your question, it is like being an artist. We have already we all of us have the keen observing of many things. We have
Deepti,
many interests in many. Yeah.
Deepti, sorry
Yeah.
to trouble you. Could you please hold the microphone closer?
Yeah. Now.
Yes, yes, it is clear. Please go on.
Yes. So, being an artist, it's everyone's observation and the keen interest towards the many of the things. So, my interest always led with the biological or the organisms. Why? Because being so many species and being many organisms and their living habits and their locomotion and like their habits, then like so many things, just they are also the yeah.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, 1 minute. I'm there is some trouble.
No, there is
So
some noise, but we can hear you. Please go on.
Hello, Dipti, are you there?
I'm continuously able to sing some background song from my mobile. So
Yeah, if you just keep your microphone a little away from you and if you try to speak, it's perfect. We can hear you.
It's they are also like having the habits of the living, just we all do the things we all do, the humans all do, they all organisms also do. So so not observing the humans or the or our civilization, I was keen observing towards their biological organisms, because we all are connected into one system. Okay, so basically I was very much glad and interested the organisms and how they function, and being a small character or being a large size, so how this all functions. So I gradually came towards their having the about reading some of the books.
Deepthi, we have lost your voice. No, unfortunately, we are not able to hear you. I request other participants to kindly mute yourself. Deepthi, could we get you back? It seems she's facing some more trouble.
Should we just go ahead and then
Yes, yes.
maybe,
Yeah,
and
we'll
please
do
feel
that.
free to share in whatever language everybody is comfortable in.
That's right.
जो भी language आपको comfortable रहता है वो आप उसमें बात कर सकते हैं. I'm sure सब समझ जाएंगे. I think it's the heart which is important. Your visuals are enough, but just because हमको आपके life में peep करना है इसीलिए हम बोल रहे हैं. So please feel free to share in whatever language you're comfortable in.
Certainly, certainly. Drawing from Deepti's connections with the zoological aspect, and she has a very surreal element. Of course, nature presents us with a lot of surreal aspects. The one which we are into currently is hyper surrealism we are experiencing in real time. I would have liked to ask her more about this, but yeah, so we will certainly continue with the discussion. Moving on to with this approach towards nature and closely looking at the natural elements, I will ask Kumar the next question. कुमार, आपका जो ओवरऑल काम है जिसमें फाइबर के साथ काम करना, प्रिंट मेकिंग से आप जुड़े हुए हैं और आप खुद के पेपर बनाते हैं, तो वो पेपर बनाने के जो जरिया है और वो जो प्रोसेस है उसमें काफी अलग अलग वैरायटी का पेपर आप इस्तेमाल करते हैं. सो आपका अप्रोच ये इसमें भूमिका क्या रही है कि आप पेपर के साथ कैसे जुड़े, पेपर बनाना ये आपके प्रोसेस में कैसे आया?
एक्चुअली सर, बचपन से मैं स्कूल में कम और खेतों में ज्यादा रहता था, और जब मैं कॉलेज में जाता था तो 4th ईयर में मोस्टली सब लोग बड़े बड़े काम करते थे, तो मुझे वो पॉसिबल नहीं होता था क्योंकि मेरा थोड़ा फाइनेंशियल इशू था. और प्रिंट में मैं जब काम करता था तो प्रिंट में मुझे थोड़ा काम करने में बहुत अच्छा लगता था क्योंकि उड़कट में काम होता था, फिर उसमें एचिंग वगैरह उसमें काम ज्यादातर के होता था. तो प्रिंट के जो हमारे सर थे उन्होंने मुझे एक वर्कशॉप के लिए केरला भेजा था पेपर मेकिंग के. तो जब वहां पे मैं गया तो पेपर मेकिंग सीखते समय मुझे कुछ आइडिया नहीं था कि मैं खाली मुझे लगा कि मैं पेपर सीखने वाला हूँ. बट जब उस जगह पे मैं गया तब नेचुरल फाइबर को लेके पेपर बनाना था. तो फर्स्ट टाइम मैंने देखा कि केले के पेड़ से पेपर बन रहा है, तो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा क्योंकि अभी मेरा पूरा बचपन का प्रोसेस और खेतों में मैंने जो काम किया था वो सब मैं खुद से आर्ट में भी उस तरह से काम कर सकता था. ये मुझे समझ में आया। और तब से मैंने वापस मैं बॉम्बे आया। बॉम्बे के बाद में जब गांव आया तो मैंने मेरे खेतों में जितने भी रॉ फाइबर्स रहते हैं, जैसे कि वो कूड़ा समझ के फेंक देते हैं खेतों में से, जैसे कि फसल उगाने के बाद केले को पेड़ को फेंक देते हैं, तो मैंने उसको फिर मेरे काम में यूज करना शुरू कर दिया। और उससे मैंने अलग अलग पेपर बनाना भी शुरू कर दिया। खेतों में बहुत सारे फाइबर्स मेरे अवेलेबल थे, तो उसका यूज मैं हर टाइम एक्सपेरिमेंट के तौर पे करता रहा। और मैंने बहुत अलग अलग टाइप के पेपर भी बनाना शुरू कर दिया। फिर मुझे काम करने के लिए पैसे की जरूरत नहीं थी, क्योंकि मेरे पास अभी नेचुरल फाइबर और मेरे खेत का मटेरियल अवेलेबल था। तो ऐसे करके मैंने अलग अलग फाइबर में काम किया है। इसमें मैंने गोबर से भी मैंने पेपर बनाए हैं, तो एंजॉय करता हूँ मैं ये प्रोसेस।
Okay. Meher, I think the slide sharing has changed. Could you please go back to the presentation? Meher?
Just a second, yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. So yes, to move on, या कुमार, आपके ओवरऑल अभी ये जो आप मटेरियल यूज कर रहे हैं, सो उसमें इंक का एक कलर का एक पर्टिकुलर सिग्निफिकेंस नजर आता है। सो उसको आप किस तरह से देखते हो? नेचुरल फाइबर का अपना ही एक सिग्निफिकेंस कलर जो मिलता है उससे, या फिर आप उसके ऊपर प्रिंट मेकिंग जब करते हो तो वो प्रोसेस के बारे में आप क्या बोलेंगे?
एक्चुअली जब मैं प्रिंट लेता हूँ तो मैं जो ऊपर बनाता हूँ तो वो मेरा बैकग्राउंड है। जैसे कि खुद का भी एक बैकग्राउंड रहता है। जैसे मैं एक फार्मर का बेटा हूँ, तो वो जो मटेरियल यूज करता हूँ वो मेरे फार्म से आता है। और उसके ऊपर जो आकार आते हैं, जो फॉर्म्स आते हैं, वो मैंने जो अभी जीवन में देख रहा हूँ या जो मैंने देखा है, अनुभव किया है, वो मेरे काम के ऊपर पेपर के ऊपर फ्रॉम थ्रू आता है।
ओके ओके जी, धन्यवाद कुमार। आपसे फिर बात होगी या जरूर। जब आप the way we speak about color, the idea of pigmentation or being connected with the earthiness, which is significantly reflected in the works of Gurunathan here. So I will direct the next question to Gurunathan about his practice of choosing abstraction as one of the medium of his expression, and he works closely with fabrics and mineral pigments. So Guru, can you please elaborate us your connection with this, the use of the pigments, and how you refer to natural pigments instead of the ready-made available pigments, and also the connection to fabrics, different materials which come in as part of your painterly or the kind of a pastiche process you continue with?
Okay. So I first thank to Priyasri and Nikhil, both of them, giving this opportunity. Actually, when I was started in the early time, I didn't know about these pigments. That time I know like vibhuti and kungumam and some turmeric, like this kind of powder. So I really like to experiment with a new medium. So when I started, and then I'm trying this kind of things, and some point the insects, they eat that turmeric and the vibhuti and kungumam, this kind of thing. So after I was working in Lalit Kala Academy in Chennai, nearby Benita Persial, she is working in that same studio. I am doing like this kind of experiment, and suddenly she told me like you can try some pigments, so natural pigments. And after I bought like a natural pigment from the shop. So after I'm working with natural pigment, it's really nice medium, you know, like to explore. It's kind of like a more a raw feel, and then it's kind of like a very matte. It's not shiny. When you're working with acrylic, some point it's kind of like when you're moving like this side and this side, you can see that shiny quality. But when you work with pigments, you cannot see like that kind of difference. You can go any side, you can see the same same visual. It's not gives like a different. So like that, I'm choosing the pigments, and then I'm continues to working. And you know, the process, it's really beautiful. When I'm preferring this pigment, I'm using that gum. It's come from the trees. So I bought it from the Paris corner, and then I'm bringing to studio, and then put it in hot water, and then I'm mixing, and then it's ready with 1 or 2 days. And after I'm mixing with pigment, and then I'm binding that time, I'm seeing like lots of different visuals also in the same time, you know, like the moon and the sun and the Mars, you know, like so many we are calling like the planet. It's when I was mixing in the bucket, I'm seeing like that kind of images. It's coming to me, and then it's going back, and I'm dissolving, and then I'm recreating, you know, like it's kind of like some point I can create accident, and some point I can accept the accident also in my work. So when I was prepare this color, and after I'm going to the canvas, and then simply what I learned from my college, you know, like everybody went to college, and we studied a lots of things, like so many different histories, so many different mediums, so many different time period, like, you know, like Renaissance and modern art, and so many different period, how it's changing. So we see this, all the things also at the same time. So what you learn, like all the learning process, everything, it's going to stay in your head. It's kind of like storage, you know, like what I'm thinking, our mind is, it's kind of like a storage, like you know, people always do anything, so it's possible. So people, they not think they cannot do it anything from their own. But you know, like in the lockdown period time, when the people inside the home, they always cook their food, they always grow their garden, and then they can make some vegetables, and then what they want, they can make some chairs or something. They're trying so many things in their homes. You know, people have that capacity, people have that power, and everything there. They have all the things, but they not realize they're going to do it or not. But they have all the human, they have that special power. But you know, some point I studied in my college teach me like so many really good things. And when I was finished my college, after I went to so many theater people, drama people, writer and friends, and lots of travel, you know, like I met so many different people. They are really great, you know, like the information, everything, it's coming from our nearby friends and people. And when you're walking in the street, you can see so many things, you know, it's all coming to your mind. And when I was sitting on my canvas, and then I can start my painting, you know, it's kind of like what I want specifically. So it's kind of like a research I'm taking now. It's kind of like a research project, my abstraction, you know, like how the mind is working, how when I start the painting, how the ideas it's coming to in the canvas, you know, I'm thinking about this. I wanted to make a document about this, all the things. That's very important, I'm thinking right now. because like the deconing that Jackson Pollock, then Picasso, and so many artists, why they are doing like abstractions, it's kind of like a question what they think, what they get it from, they done the painting after what they're getting. It's kind of like a trigger, and it's kind of like a question to me, like, and some point I realized, what you studied from in your college, that all the ideas and all the practices and all the inputs, everything in your mind, when you're working that time, like when you go and when you start your work, and like they already teach you like best composition, like a bad composition, and something, the people talk about like this, like a good art, like a bad art, like art is not like that. Artists have like a open platform. It's kind of like you need to see how people are expressing like a way of art,
Right.
it's that is very important, what you need to see.
Right.
So
Guru, sorry to cut you. Like,
okay,
yeah.
tell.
I'm curious about while you are speaking about the knowledge being a storage, and I'm curious how you refer to abstraction as an ongoing process, and also while you look at so many diverse practices around. So, what makes you grounded to abstraction as an idea, as a process of your work? So, we will be keen to learn that.
Okay, so actually when I was I'm working on the time, I'm not planning anything, but just I'm sitting, and then I have already some knowledge in my studies and what I'm seeing in the movie or nature or flowers or landscape or something. It's all comes to in my mind, but I have some composition idea. It's kind of like branding, like when the people work, like they have a like some started of style, and then some kind of way of behavior. It is coming to my side in my work. It's kind of like a circle composition. I'm putting that composition, and then I can take my ideas, and then I can put it in my canvas, and then I can work. Some point I can make the accident, some point I can accept the accident, so I can work like this. And at the same point, I'm using that fabric, like fabric, it's a part of our Indian culture, like beginning time, they made it like lots of indigo fabric. The British people, they take away like lots of people working for that cloths. And India, basically, it's made for a cloth. Like they're doing always like a weaving, and they're making so many different fabrics. So the fabric, it's part of our life. Like we always wearing, and then we are seeing like, and then we are seeing, we feel like proud and happy. And the colors, India always makes like beautiful colors. So people always love the colors. So I really enjoy the colors to make a composition, like it makes more beautiful, and it's giving so much power, like when you see that dripping, and then the forceful action is going like this, it's all makes you like kind of like a power.
Right.
So
Right.
I feel like that. And then I'm using that fabric. It makes kind of like branding for me. It's giving like that kind of quality. So always in our India, like making like so many real good clothes. They have
Right.
like a nice branding names. So it's coming to part of my painting. I feel it's giving like a more texture and nice feeling and nice power also. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thanks a lot, Guru. It's amazing to look at how you refer to the fabric or the textile industry, and also the use of pigments. Uh, this leads to me a query towards the practice of Astha here. While we refer to Guru's practice where he uses natural pigments, and throughout the history of pigment sourcing naturally, we know that human interference has been a significant element in it. And Astha's practice has a very strong reference to Anthropocene as an idea. So I'm curious what Astha has to state about this, and her landscapes, which have a very subtle academic reference with surreal elements embedded in it. So Astha, could you please elaborate on the process of how these ideas come to your work?
Sure. Hi everyone, good afternoon. So let's go back to last year when everything was normal and I was in the USA for 2 months. I was on a road trip and I had the privilege to go and visit various national parks and everything. Before this, my practice was quite different, but I feel that this trip really changed a lot of things in my practice. So while we were on the road, I could see, these vast landscapes and, these deserted hills and everything. And they were so amazing. But in the middle of that, like somewhere I could see these, like the towers, like the electricity towers. And out of nowhere, there are these huge solar plants and everything. So those things sort of, made me think about how much impact we have made on this planet. And I don't mean it completely in the negative sense, but really like what sort of mark we make on the planet, that everywhere we go, we see some influence, even if it's on nature. So that really put me in the space where I was thinking about Anthropocene as a subject. My friend helped me out by pointing the name, and then I delved into the topic. And then I realized that we are actually in a new geological epoch. Before it was Holocene, but like since then, like from the day when we started to move land, like basically move land around, build spaces for pleasure and also for our own good, build societies and everything. So how we have evolved from that sense, and how much we have come in the way that we also influence nature. We try to control it. And like in this work that we can see, it is called Grafted Evergreens and Candies, which is actually, so during the lockdown, I got to visit many these nurseries and everything, because I was planting various plants around my house and everything. And then I realized that how much we, depend on nature, because nature doesn't really depend on us, but we pull nature in and we want to feel good about ourselves, and we want to plant these things around us for this, green effect that, it is so fresh, and at times it has become ornamental now. So like these plants over here, so there's this row of Chinese evergreens, which is a breed of a plant, which is very ornamental, and it is said to have, like these value, like, so basically it gives out more oxygen and everything. So it's basically a natural air purifier. So how we, like plant it around, and we want to make this certain rhythm out of it, where like nature has its own rhythm, but we also try to control it. And then there are these, candies, which is basically a type of weed. These are like wildflowers. So they are just randomly growing around the space, and like sort of nature has its own way of intervening everywhere. So that is how I perceive my work.
So it makes me like curious about these ideas when you're speaking about these nurseries, and you also engaging with planting at home. Especially during this lockdown period, a lot of people have engaged with what's so-called urban farming, and a salvation effect for the catastrophe which has caused to the planet. So people are moving towards the entire idea of microgreens and all sort of trying to become agrarians in the urban context itself. So how do you look at that development in the city, in the urban context?
Well, as I said, like as humanity is evolving, so is farming. And then when I see these things like, hydroponics and those microgreens and everything, so that sort of intrigues me, that how much hard we are trying to, like, so basically those are also shortcuts. You don't have soil, so you take a sponge and then you plant microgreens over it, like you have a salad ready. So all of these processes sort of intrigue me, because to be honest, they don't really make a huge mark on like nature as such, because we need forest more. But that also intrigues me, that how much we are trying to make up for the damage that we've done, and how much we are trying to come out of that whole zone that, oh, now like we have to do something about it.
Right. Great. Great.
Yeah.
So, considering like your response to the home of humans, and I would like to move on to and question Savita regarding this. That home as an architectural idea, built environment is a significant part of your practice. So, how would you bring in those association affinities to built environment? Yes, on to you, Savita.
Yeah, so I always have been interested in architecture, and the idea of home is something that
Savita, if you're using earphones, can I request you to hold the microphone closer?
Yeah. Now you can hear me clearly?
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah, so the idea of home has always been a part of my life, because my whole childhood till now, I've been shifting places and cities because of my parents' job and everything. So how do we perceive a house, or how do we see it? And each and every time when we shift or when we move from one place to another, we have a certain idea in our mind, like we want these things in certain way, or we have seen some element somewhere in the magazines, or like when you make a house, everybody has a ideal home or the dream home of themselves in their mind. So to make that house, when you get the opportunity to do that, you always refer to magazines, or you see somewhere when you have visited a place, or you see it in a movie or serial or anywhere. You see certain elements and you wish or desire that that particular element should be at your place. And that desire of making an ideal home is what I'm currently working on. And the images that you're seeing right now are the collages that I have made out of found images, magazine cutouts. Because for me, visuals or the images are, they talk to me more than the text. So I see it as a pattern, or I perceive them very easily rather than perceiving text. So even if I'm going through a magazine or anything, I see the visuals first, and then if the visuals interest me more, then I go towards the text of it. So that is what made me do these works and go forward with it. And I have done printmaking as my master's and painting as my bachelor's. So when we talk about printmaking, why I like it is because of the process of making, rather than the process, the end result, or the how it has turned out. The process of making itself is very meditative, or very, you have to engross in the process and you be a part of the work itself. Like when you make a home, or when you decide inside the home also, you rearrange your furniture to your own comfort level or your own necessities. So that engrossment and that involvement is what I like in the process of making. So by doing that, when I was in masters, I attended a workshop by a professor from Ohio called Nicholas Hill. So he was introducing us with the eco-friendly printmaking medium. Like the traditional printmaking medium involves ink plate, acid, and those kind of things, which right now are affecting the nature and everything. So in eco-friendly printmaking medium, he taught us the process of printmaking as with the immediacy of it. Like you don't need to have a setup to do a printmaking. You can make print out of any found object you find around your house. So very interesting process I found was using empty juice boxes or Tetra packs to take print out of. Like instead of a zinc plate, I make my drawings on an empty juice box. I cut open it. So inside that there is a foil shine finish. So I make drawings and carve out of that, then take print out of it. So it acts as a immediate process, and the thoughts that I have or I want to jot it down immediately. Sometimes you write it, sometimes text are the medium of jotting the thoughts down, and sometimes you need a visual element for it. So visually, I work with, this is the best medium, and the printmaking process, the process of making is what interested me. So that's how I work right now.
Right, right. Great. So I would ask you a question regarding since there is a significant formal uh, simile between yours and Parvati's work here in terms of how she works with a small rubric of different imageries. So how would you respond to her work in this context? Like the way formally, basically, I'm looking at as a formal similarity in both of your work.
Uh, I I don't know how I look at it, but the series of the poetic images, that the five poems that she did, that fascinated me a lot, because that's the home she's been living for a very longer time, and this lockdown has made her realize certain things and learn certain new things about the place around her, is what interested me. Because I also learned something very similar. The house that we spend so much time building and perfecting, we don't really spend that much time in the house. We always are outside working or going places or doing stuff and everything. And we come home at night just to sleep, like it's just a shelter for us. But we spend so much of time building that structure.
Right.
So this lockdown has made me realize that I discovered corners and spaces inside my house to sit, hang out, read, and work. So that is something which I find similar with Parvati's work.
Okay, okay, great. So I learned that your work was collaboratively presented at the Tate. So can
Yeah.
Asta and you both share your experience and the how the work process and how you came up with the work?
Yeah, I would like Astha to start first, because she was the one who approached me. Like, we are having this plan, let's go ahead with it. So Astha, please go on.
So basically, even to me, my friend, she approached me, and then she told me that basically there's an open call and everything, and we have to recreate this work, not this particular work. So basically, Tate Collective, they had an open call in which they asked various young artists to recreate classic art pieces, including Ophelia by Sir John Everett Millais. So basically, we chose that, and then we decided to work on it. And then we were just, I guess, 2 days away from the deadline, and then somehow we got a place to carry it all out. And then I was the photographer, and Savita was also the photographer. And then two of our friends were the models, and we were sort of, like together doing the makeup and the concept and everything. So yeah, it was a really fun collaborative project. And then later on, it got selected. We were super surprised because it was a very quick venture, I would
Yeah,
say.
it was a very quick response also from Tate. And
Yeah.
we did this project because we, being in the same city, we could not meet because of the lockdown. So this project was a reason behind meeting and working together, because me and Astha were partners in Priyasri Art Studio, Baroda. So we used to see each other every day, and that 4 months of not seeing each other was very like, what is happening? We want to work together, we want to meet. So this project acted as a reason to hang out and just work as a group.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, it was selected, and we were very happy and excited. Like, how did this happen? Actually.
True.
Yes. So basically, the selected works were displayed on billboards across London. So ours was displayed on the Royal College Street in Camden for 2 weeks. So yeah,
Wonderful.
it was a very fun venture.
Right, right. Yeah. On this note, I would like to open up it for the audience if there are any questions. So yeah, so in chat box there are some questions which have been posted. I would ask Parvati to refer and respond to that. Meher, could you please stop the screen sharing and we can just have the speakers highlighted. Yeah. Parvati, this question is for you. How would you like to further your idea of interconnectedness in your future works?
For me, it's always it's an organic process of continuing. So one of the ways in which it happens very often is collaboration. So I think I briefly touched on this this project that would have been seen as a large-scale performance within a series of art installations. That's not going to happen. So there, I'm actually collaborating with my niece, who's a storyteller, and we're using autobiography. We're using papers that my father left behind. Mm-hmm. So to kind of connect something from history with another generation and with a different medium, I hope the work will realize itself at some stage, but certainly at the moment we're moving towards wanting to do it as imaged storytelling, like sort of storytelling sessions with art, and maybe with a series of videos. So I mean, that's one trajectory. The poetry could be another trajectory, and sort of so one would be collaboration, the other would be allowing other mediums to come in and work with these ideas as they will.
Right, great. Yes, so there is one more question. It is directed to Savita. So there is so much of mathematical calculation in making of a structure. Since you are influenced by architectural structures, do you have a mathematical bent? So Savita, could you respond to that?
Mathematical bent, I don't really like. Not really. The thing is, I am interested in the repetitiveness of a particular pattern. So by repeating it, it automatically creates a symmetrical structure, which is then cut by some other structure which is coming upon it, because I make collages I make artworks out of the collages, and the collages act as a sketch. So that repetitiveness of the patterns is what gives the illusion of mathematical calculation, because everything is, I do stenciling. So I make one pattern, I break down the patterns, and I create one design, and I put those designs side by side, and like multiple times. So that's what I do. I don't really have a calculation or
okay.
Since we are at it, I have a question for Savita and Astha, that since you collaborated, I'm very curious to know that did you people find yourself or lose yourself?
We definitely found ourselves, I feel.
Yes, definitely. One of the model is part of the group, Pranshu Thakur. She was the model for our collaboration. She's also there as an audience.
Yeah.
Right.
And it also made us want to collaborate more, I guess.
Yeah.
We became open to collaborations, because usually, as artists, we feel like, we are very dominating people, I would say. So we feel like whatever we do, we try to control the situation, and we want to, do it in a certain way that we would. But
bingo,
after this,
that's what I meant. That did you lose yourself? Because most artists, they have a very strong voice. So
yeah.
I know it's very exciting for me sitting outside and saying collaborations are great, but I really want to know what they go through. What did you go through? Did you have a fight, or did you disagree? Or, I mean, it's beautiful, of course, experience. It's like a relationship,
Yeah, it is like a relationship. We did not have fights. In fact, there are a lot of ideas that were coming into to make that collaborative project more successful. Like we had we did not have that much light source, and we did not have that much help. So my sister came with me to help as a spot girl, and like checking the drapery or like the plants that are placed in the water. And I made some lights, and Pranshu helped her with the venue, and Rahi was the concept writing part. And in that way, we all came together because everybody had a different skill set, and those different skill sets were put to good use, I would say. Like, very
also
right
because
use of it.
Yeah, also because of the time constraint, I feel that we couldn't really fight because we didn't have the time to spare. So it was really smooth. I'm grateful to that.
Right. So we are almost running out of time. If there are any questions from the audience, we can address a couple of more and then conclude the session. And of course, the conversation shall continue for next in the session in the evening. Yes. So
there are some more questions, Ramsha, if you can read it.
yes.
Okay, so basically I wanted to ask, I think we should close that.
Never mind, I will read it out. I guess these are some questions from Facebook. Okay.
So this was, yeah, so this was just me. I was actually very intrigued by Savita's practice, and one of my other friends who works in a similar pattern with architectural and yeah, like rigid patterns, but then, you know, trying to free away with it. And when she spoke about not having a mathematical bent, I was thinking of parkour as an idea. You know, like a free running in the city, it almost looks like she's free running on her two-dimensional area, and it's not very constructed with mathematical whatever you say it, equations, but you know, it's more like just letting herself out. So just as an idea, I was thinking, how does she looks at parkour within her own practice?
So it's similar to parkour. Like in parkour, it's just the instincts, and you trust yourself, and your mind has to be very powerful and concentrate. So it's similar to that. I trust my instincts, and I feel for that particular moment, like this will work this way, or this won't work this way. So I go with the flow, like how they go in the flow with the parkour. You see, it's so fascinating, like they jump from here and there, and it as if it feels like they already know the place, but it's not like that. They are there for the first time, or they have been to the similar place, and that is a similarity. I do. Thanks to mention that, make me realize that art my work.
Yeah, I thought because the main instincts is what keeps the importance within your practice, and that's very similar to how that practice is happening. Yeah.
Right. Of course, we will continue the second round of conversations in the evening. So if there are more questions, if any, at least we can respond to one more. Right. Okay. So before we conclude the session today, like as I again, I would like to reiterate that there is an eclectic mix in the entire the group of artists in the first panel. So like each of them are responding or working with an element, earthly element, or responding to certain socio-cultural context. It's something I would leave the audience also with this thought that how and what the role of an artist in this context, are their response, are interpreted, intercepted by the society in what manners. Of course, the effort to bringing this experience of presenting online is an extension to have a dialogue and a conversation ongoing beyond what has been a certain stipulated viewership. So this certainly, while the lockdown situation has confined us to our homes, this has also allowed simultaneously to reach out to a different and diverse audiences. And I think I see that to be a good potential exposure for a wider and maybe different dialogues would be triggered out of this. So yes, so we look forward to all of the audiences and participating artists to be part of the session in the evening. And yeah, so the second round of artist powwow will be at 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. today. Yeah, so yes.
So I want to just say that you guys really are courageous to show your vulnerable self. You know, you've actually, you know, showed us what you truly are inside. You know, when I always believe that when you see a piece of art or a creation, you actually see the person's lives. So you shared your internal spaces, the nuances of your historical, socio-economical influences, which have become a part of your work. Most of you have shared your histories. I just got a feeling that these works have just inconspicuously arrived. We really don't see the struggle which you all go through. I'm sure the artist knows the struggle, but when, as a viewer, when we see, we just feel that it's an inconspicuous benefit of being an artist, but that's not true. So we conclude our day's session, and I want to thank Nikhil for triggering this questionnaire, where it became really interesting, and Meher, who's a co-curator of Priyasri Art Gallery, to sincerely work towards it, and Ramsha, our gallery coordinator, for coordinating the event, and Rohita, our social media intern, who has been tirelessly working towards bringing more people to listen to what you have to say. So thank you for sharing your journeys, and I hope to see you at 5 p.m. Thank you.